Well, hey there, welcome back. And as promised, this intro is going to be short. Uh, we held Layne and Mitz and I hosted a Onefinity a Q&A session that was live on December 3rd at 8 p.m. and had a great time. Had about 60 folks join us and had a lot of Q&A time. And so as we promised would happen, this is the rebroadcast of that live event so that if you missed it, you're going to be able to pick up any info that you're interested in here. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
So let me do this since it's 8 o'clock. Why don't we go ahead and get started here? And so Layne, were you able? I saw Layne earlier, and now I'm not familiar with this screen here. So Layne, are you here, buddy?
Yeah, he's muted right now.
Yeah, I had to unmute. I'm in my shop right now, so I'm you might see me walk around here. And again, I'm in the midst of a busy season, but it's welcome to everybody coming. It's kind of good to see this many people. I think this is a good environment to get everybody, one, into CNC, and two, get everybody involved. And I'll just tell you my own story. I've got 4 CNC machines now, but I've had every, I'm trying to think of a good word for piece of junk CNCs that's been out there. And some of them worked, some of them worked less well, but I learned something from each one. And the hardest thing was, and you'll recognize this, is my first one showed up in a box. And then any guesses what I did when I got it?
Probably spent a weekend putting it together.
No, I stuck it in the corner in my shop and didn't mess with it for 6 months. So if that sounds familiar, that's like a lot of people, because it was intimidating. There's a lot of parts. It came in about 1,000 pieces, and the instructions were poor to poor. And when I got it together and figured out how it worked, it started opening things up. And that's the way CNC is. You learn little bits here and there, kind of like you do with woodworking. You know, the first time you try to cut something, you make nothing square unless it was purely accidental. And so that's kind of the way that CNC is. For me, I had to work my way back to what I thought I already knew. And then it got more familiar. So that's kind of why I'm interested in helping people out on this, because there's a lot of people help me along the way.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Layne. And Layne, just for the benefit of the group, when did you get your machine? You and Mitz were more early adopters than I was. So I think you guys were in the very close to the initial round. Was that correct?
Number 51.
Yeah. Okay. And Mitz, you were in real early, right?
Yeah, I was in the 60s.
Yeah. So unlike these guys, I didn't, I spent about a year researching CNC machines. And thankfully, the Onefinity came on scene somewhere in the midst of my research. And I joined the Facebook group. And probably put my first post on there probably about 13 months ago or something, 14 months, a little bit in October or something of 20. And I can just tell you that for me, so like I think somebody else had mentioned earlier, and I've done woodworking for a long time, but I've only had a CNC machine since, so I got my Onefinity early this year. But I tell you, the one thing that has impressed me about this Facebook group and specifically the Onefinity community specifically is the willingness to help each other and come to each other's kind of aid when you have a problem and all that stuff. And I'm not trying to out him or make him the next target or something. But so Layne has answered a bunch of questions that I've had, because I do mainly flat work, I would call it, so I do a lot of furniture is what my main thing is. And I know this machine is capable of a hell of a lot more than that, a lot of 3D stuff, but that's just not in my workflow. But so Layne and Mitz both seem to have a lot more experience with, that type of work than I do. And they were super kind when I first joined and answered all my silly questions. And frankly, we even spent some time on the telephone. But so that's kind of my story. I've had mine just about a year. And Mitz, can you just share with us, was this your first CNC? I know you've been woodworking for a long time, but give us a little.
I've been woodworking for an extremely long time, and extremely, probably last 30, 40 years maybe. But I really wanted to expand into the CNC work just because of the type of work that you can do. And, I've got more of an artistic side to me, as Mr. Pags over here has as well. And I like doing a lot of 3D work. So, many of you know Mike Pagnatelli, and he's got some amazing stuff all the time. So, but that's what I kind of aspire to, is just doing that. And I kind of live in a vacation land area in Northwest Wisconsin, and so we get a lot of touristy trade, which is good for a target in terms of what I sell.
Okay.
But this is my first CNC.
Yeah, well, great. So just so that we can kind of roll, because here's what I'll tell the group is that when we kind of chatted about and formed up this idea of what might be helpful for people as they kind of break into this new territory, and sometimes what you realize is that when you're posting a question on Facebook, it can be difficult to really encapsulate what problem you're having in that textual environment, right? And then out of the kindness of everybody's hearts, you'll get thrown at a million different suggestions based on the nature of how they understand your question. And so we kind of had a chat about what are the most common things that we've observed over time that people seem to struggle with. And we thought that because this is the first one of these that we, at least that I know of, that's happened, we thought we would just kind of throw out a couple of quick topics that might be helpful to someone who's brand new or even anticipating their machine coming. And then after that, as best we can with the group that's here, using this technology, whether it is that you type a question or, if we unmute, kind of being careful not to step all over each other, because this can get a little chaotic in some of these really big meetings. Kind of leave it open to the group and say, what do you see? Because you might not be on the very beginner stuff. You might be a little bit past that, but there's a lot of subject matter experts that are here that could possibly help you understand, or even if you're not the guy with the question or the gal with the question, you might pick up something from that, right? So to that end, just kind of get us going, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to try to share my screen here real quick. And so I'm going to cover.
JR,
yes, sir.
Just a second, just so everybody knows, we're going to cover a couple of upfront items, but there will be a Q&A probably at the latter half of this meeting, just so that you have an opportunity to ask specific questions rather than what we're talking about.
Yeah, so the things that we're going to start with, thank you, Mitz, that's a great point, that the things we're going to start with were just kind of the basic layer of at ground zero, how do you start, right? And then hopefully that Q&A session is going to be where we'll get into stuff that is interesting to you, right? But this was a little bit difficult. This is a bit of an experiment to figure out what would be helpful to everybody. So understand that this section is going to be relatively short, where we're just going to present some stuff to the newest of users. And then immediately following that, we hope that you guys would not be bashful and, raise a hand, ask a question, type it in the chat, whatever you're comfortable doing. Please let us know what's on your mind. So let me just share my screen real quick. My part that I'm going to start with, are you seeing, Onefinity journeyman picture up here?
Yes.
Okay, super. So just to go over this real quick. So the video is going to be recorded, so that people who couldn't attend might be able to pick it up later. We're going to make it available on my YouTube channel and Mitz and Layne's YouTube channel. Once we kind of edit down some of the maybe dead space and so forth, we're going to just start the first couple of minutes with very basic level info. And frankly, the rest of it, we're going to wing it and talk about the stuff that's important to you guys and see, what might be on your mind. The part that I would like to cover is, you know, and this is really basic, but this is, you know, you've got your machine out of the box and you're going to put it on a table. How do I position it? And that's going to be super simple, right? Many people we find, you know, overthink that part. Mitz hopefully is going to be able to share his screen and show you how to do something super basic, right? Meaning just a couple of shapes in Carveco, right? Because another topic that comes up a lot in the Facebook group is which software do you like and which one works better? And I think that's a very personal, you know, just how you use the software is going to be what makes sense to you. And then if Layne has the capability on his computer, I might see if he could do the same thing within the Vectric environment. And really it just going to show you how to make a circle, how to make a square, and then how to export that into G code. Because one of the repeated things that you see happen with some newer users is that they keep trying to put the design file into their Onefinity controller instead of the G code. So we're just going to show you that one extra little step at the end when it's all done. And again, this is, so if you want to write it down so that you could go and subscribe, Layne and Mitz have done a great job. They have spoil board cutting videos using both those different pieces of software. And have I got that name of the channel right, Mitz? Is it Onefinity Training Tips and Tricks?
You got it.
Okay, so if y'all search in YouTube for that, you would find their channel, and you could certainly benefit from giving them a subscribe and see as they, you know, work through stuff. And then I have also listed mine there because, you know, if I can't plug myself, nobody will, right? So and so now I'm going to go to, with your permission, to a simple just going to talk about when you have your machine out, right? And I'm going to assume that you have put the two Y rails in place and you have loosely positioned that X rail. And now you need to figure out, okay, well, where does the spoil board fit within the working envelope of the machine? And there's another, so Jeff and Jess, I think it is, of Two Moose Design, they had a really good video that then that's what I kind of followed, or it might have been also partially from Mitz and Layne. And there is somewhere in here that I can be able to draw or something. So but what I do when I'm setting up my spoil board is that I will, can you see me drawing a circle in the bottom left corner there?
Circle. Yep, we can see it.
Yeah, so you see that I am not an artist, okay? So the very first thing that I will do is I will jog the machine with a V-bit, right? And I'll get the sharpest damn one I've got and chuck it up in the machine, and I'm gonna move that thing all the way forward and all the way left. I'm gonna drive that bit about a 1/16 of an inch into my work surface, not my spoil board, but my actual work table. And then I'm just going to spin the router. And all I'm doing is I'm trying to make a small little hole right where that location is using that V-bit. Then I'm going to lift it up. And then I do the same thing. I go to all four corners, right? So I go back here, and then I go back here, and then I come up here. And all I'm doing is I'm just making a pip mark, PIP mark, right? With the sharpest V-bit that I have on hand. And then guys, literally, this is as simple as it is. In my case, I used T-track, and it's relatively straight, right? So I just line up the inside of the T-track with those two pip marks. And then I start to build my table out to the right, keeping it, you know, within the confines of the forwardmost position. And that's going to get you functional. And the thing that I would tell you guys who are waiting for a machine to come, I gave myself a little bit of paralysis through analysis, right? I stood over this damn thing and went, okay, well, what's the best way? And where's my 1, 2, 3 blocks? And where's my calipers? And, you know, where's all this fancy shit? you know what I needed to do was just get the thing working, because the very first cut that you're going to do is your spoil board surface. So, and you're probably going to make some mistakes with your first spoil board. At least I did. I won't speak for you, but I did. And your first spoil board probably isn't going to last very long, because that's what you're going to learn on. So the main thing that I would suggest is just making sure that it is within the working envelope of the machine. And that's why, again, I just put 4 corners, a pip mark in every corner, and then just built my spoil board within that particular parameter. So, and it's, I'm trying to, how do I get off this thing? Clear, shit. Hang on, bear with me a second here. Okay, so now if I was to zoom in, and this is my actual spoil board, and if you see right here is the pip mark, or where that V-bit was stuck like a lawn dart into my work table. And as long as I'm just a little bit inside that pip mark, then any bit that I'm going to use on that spoil board is going to fit within the working envelope. Because one thing that sometimes happens is people build their spoil board just a little bit outside of the working envelope of the machine, and then you see the questions that come up. Hey, why is my working limits say under or over, or whatnot? And it's a lot of times because somebody was trying to build their spoil board just a hair outside of the machine's actual working space. So that might have been a little too basic, but are there, before we move on, is there any questions about that I either wasn't clear about, or that you have a question about? We could just open it up to anybody that has a question about that.
Yeah, we've got a question from Colin.
A question on that. So I don't have my journeyman yet, but I have built a steel framework. We'll call it with joists underneath the table.
Okay.
And I'm using inserts, and I want to get my inserts on either side of the joist that runs from left to right. So I'm wondering how I'm going to position the machine so that one of my inserts doesn't hit the steel joists.
So insert nuts that you're going to use for work holding, is that what you're describing?
Yes, I'm going to put, instead of T-track, I'm going to have a 2.5-inch grid of T-nuts, I think you call them, underneath.
Yep.
With a threaded rod and a star tap on top.
Okay. So if you know the dimensions of your table, right, and where those trusses are, you could literally draw a 48 by 32 box in whatever design software you have. So I don't know which program you're going to use. And then you'd be able to, and probably after this, right, because I'm not in my shop, but if you wanted to reach out to me, I could tell you from the footprint on each of the front of the Y rails, how far in is the XY 00. And from there, you could be able to orient the machine to, and your spacing of your holes, you could, move your holes around to miss your trusses, if that makes sense. But really all that you would need to do is know how far in from the XY rail footprints, or the Y rail footprints where they bolt to the machine, to the tabletop, does your XY0 start, right? And then you'd be able to plot out from there relative to your trusses, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, I think so. I get a little confused on this XY, but let's go left and right on a journeyman. So it's 48 inches wide and 32 inches deep.
Yep.
I would like to know the distance from the center of the router spindle, which is going to be the Makita, from the center of that back, let's say to the, in relation to the front of the feet at the front of the two X rails, I think you call them.
If you would care to, either through Facebook or any other method, just get in contact with me. I've got a journeyman. I started with a woodworker and I've upgraded to the journeyman. So I'd be more than happy tomorrow to go give you some specific measurements so that you could work that out.
Okay, thank you.
For sure.
Hey, JR, I've got an answer to that question. He was asking about how to do your inserts on this.
Yeah.
And I recommend, real simple. This is, I've got my other little portable webcam so I can show you. But you can see how down here I've got a layer. I used a plywood layer above my table and then an MDF layer. I've used 2 MDF layers, but I would recommend to make it simple. Just stack layers and you're just cutting through your top layer of spoil board. And when you pull it off to replace it, you have a much simpler task. You're not trying to make everything fit your table. You're just making a spoil board that you're going to replace and throw away every 6 months.
Yeah.
So something pretty simple. You can see my table and how my spoil board hangs over. I didn't get it very accurate. I kind of just threw it down. I made it big enough to exceed the machine limits, but not too big that I couldn't cut it. And you will see on the back edge, I did do that. I did leave a lip. I don't cut long items through here. I don't feed them through because I don't have room in my shop. So that's not a big deal with me. Some people it is, you just cut that piece of MDF shorter and make your machine work for you. I try to keep everything as simple as I can instead of technical. I can show you on, if you want to call me later, if you use VCarve or Aspire, I can show you a real quick, easy way to set up a grid to do that, to show you where your stuff is underneath. And it's good to save a file like that so you can go cut in later if you're wanting to avoid screws that you put in the bottom layer. Just something that simple. But I know it's a little bit of an advanced topic, but I just want everybody to see kind of what I'm talking about with my machine. And I've had to rebuild this machine several times. I didn't have the size of it right. I didn't have my table right. So don't be apart and start over. It's a couple hour process and you're back cutting again.
Yes. Go ahead, Mitch. I'm sorry.
I was just asking Colin for that help. Okay.
Yeah, and Colin and everybody else. So I made it. So the funny thing is I started a YouTube channel and my very first video is still my top performing one. It's a Onefinity review video, right? And the follow-up to that, I got some questions about my spoil board and enclosure and stuff. So I made a follow-up one. And the most sage comment that I made, and this is from personal experience. Now, maybe you guys are all smarter than me, which I don't doubt, right? But what I found is that I was overthinking every part of my spoil board and how I was approaching all that stuff. And the reality of it is, but the problem is I had about 4 months to wait for my machine, I guess, pretty close to that. So I had a lot of time to just sit and think, right? Which is not good. I'm now on my 3rd spoil board version because I've just changed how, the first one, I tore it to pieces. I wasn't very good at figuring the machine out and all that stuff. So I love it that you're thinking in that fashion, right? How does my spoil board relate to my work table? But the truth is that Layne's suggestion is probably really a super on point comment. That just, if you just put plywood over it and then your MDF spoil board on top of it, you'll probably get a more stable top and you don't have to worry about your trusses either. But in any case, we would love to help you if you had further questions about that. Calvin is asking, first thickness 3/4 inch. Yeah, I think that 3/4 inches, it's readily available. It's dirt cheap. You're not going to get upset with yourself if you tear it up. You could get really two complete spoil boards out of one sheet of MDF, which is probably 35 or 40 bucks. So I wouldn't do any thicker than 3/4 inch myself personally. I don't know if Layne or Mitz have any thoughts on that, but for your MDF spoil board, yeah, I would just go 3/4 inch for sure.
Yeah, that's where mine's at as well. And Calvin, were you referring to the spoil board or the extra layer that Layne talked about?
I was actually talking about spoil board actually initially, but when I saw what Layne did with the plywood, again, I don't know if you see my question there, and this might tie in with what Colin had to say, was because I'm thinking about Colin's joist, which is what I'm thinking about doing with my table as well. But to avoid possibility of hitting fasteners, I'm also thinking now, like I just wrote there, perhaps using like a construction glue to hold down, the bottom surface to prevent any fasteners. They might be accidentally hit by a bit that might be driven too far down or not, right? So that's kind of a two-part question, really. So.
This is Layne. Just from a real quick on my spoil board, I've tried about everything in the world. I've had T-tracks, I've built all the custom ones, and I have clamps. If anybody needs clamps, I probably have 400 of them in all different sorts.
Yeah.
But what I end up using most, and this is pretty simple, is keep my spoil board flat in as much surface area as I can, so I can use blue tape and CA glue. And I use a lot of sheetrock screws, and I use the sheetrock screws to hold down my MDF. I will drill out the hole, and then I'll go back and countersink about halfway through the MDF and just run screws around the edge, a couple in the middle, make it where it's stable, and then go surface it and go cut. This is one of those, I guess, I've got about, to give you an idea, I've got about 640 hours on my Onefinity in two varieties. I had the 32 by 32, and now I've got the 32 by 48. I've got about 610 hours on a CNC for newbie that's right next to it, and I use these both every day. I cut lots, and I've got them both set up the same way. I'll drill a few holes in there and use those as a fence, and I'll put 1/2-inch dowel in there and just drop them in. It's very simple. It locates on my machine to, I think now, to 4/4. But if I end up running through a hole like I did last time, I'll just offset, drill some more holes, and keep using it till I change my spool board out. But I think my big thing is, for especially if I was advising people that are just getting started, don't try to make it too complicated. Start cutting first, and you'll figure out what works for you. Because a lot of people, if you listen to what they say, it may be a different circumstance. I'm making signs versus they're making 3D. So keep it simple, cut a lot, find out what bits you like. Everybody likes a little bit different feeds and speeds and different software. Mitz likes Carveco. I'm trying it out. I haven't really got to grips with it, but it makes really good code. I like the way it cuts. But it is to kind of one set of expectations to what you're doing. When I started this, the first carve I wanted to do was the most complex carve I've probably still ever done to date, and I have done it for money. I don't want y'all to get in that, I've got to do this and make myself sweat and almost drive yourself into hating CNC. Make a simple cut and cut a square, 6-inch square. Did it cut 6 inches? Did I cut all the way through? Did I cut halfway through my spoil board? If you cut through your spoil board, just go, looks good, and keep going. Don't worry about it. You don't have to replace it that day. 6 months from now, it'll be all marked up. And I kind of keep those, I cut out a little piece of my spoil board as a trophy, because the quicker I can chew them, the quicker I made a whole lot of things getting there. And I think that's kind of that ought to be your goal, is to make a lot of simple things, make cuts with, get a 1/4-inch upcut end mill and start out with that. Get a 60-degree V-bit. And if you want to try some more advanced stuff, get a bowl bit. Those 3 things will carry you through a whole lot of jobs that you can make good Christmas presents with. You can kind of impressing your wife after spending some degree of money. I'm just saying that goes a long way when she gets to give some gifts away and it didn't cost her anything. And there's something else that's like, anybody that's been in woodworking for a while, you make something yourself, it has a personal touch to it. And so that's part of this too, is you get to personalize it, but just keep it simple. Some people want to make a 1,000-hour cut and go, how much can I charge for it? Well, you can't charge worth your 1,000 hours, but a 5-minute cut sometimes is sufficient to do a lot of good. and it helps you learn the process. So I'd rather get a lot more cuts and have my expectations meet what I'm trying to do. It's one of the reasons I like a Onefinity, and I'm not paid for them by them. I use this with other machines. I like it. When I saw it on the market, I thought it was the best deal going. I'm an engineer by trade. I design electronics and machinery. And I thought there's nothing else on the market that can compete with this for the dollar and for the performance. And I still think I call it a game changer. But to get into this environment and try to start making stuff, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems with the software, making G-code work, making a spoil board file. I probably messed up 3 of them. I probably broke a bit trying to drive it all the way through the spoil board at high speed, and it did a good job. When you realize that, hey, the inches per minute is not meters per minute in VCARV. So you max out your machine going straight down till it breaks. It happens. The nice thing is with this machine, it's very hard and robust. It's very hard to tear things up. So feel free to try things. Part of it is if I gave you the most expensive $60,000, $80,000 shop saver, and this thing flies around 2,000 inches a minute and hits something, you're probably going to do more damage to that machine than the whole Onefinity cost. So that's part of why my encouragement is get out and play, make things, do simple things. After you've done 10 simple things, it'll make you want to try something a little more complex, and you just keep working your way up. And then when you make a mistake, hang it on the wall with pride. Just like I do with my woodworking mistakes. I've got a shopsmith over here, and I've destroyed more wood with it than that CNC will ever eat. So just be ready to have fun.
So Greg had a follow-up here that says, can a spoil board be as large as possible, even though not all will be used? And Greg, the answer is yes. Although if you surface your spoil board's working area and it's greater than the machine's working area, you're going to end up with a lip, or your spoil board will be kind of a bowl, right? You'll have a ridge on each side if you were to make it bigger. But as long as you never put a piece of material on the machine that is greater than that, well, then that lip will never come into play. But if you were ever going to tile work through the back of the machine or hang a little bit off extra on one side or the other, then it would create an issue for you. So, so you do most work, okay?
Yeah, can I follow up on that? You can go as big as 33 by 33, actually 33.1/8 by 33 on your spoil board if you want, because the pocket that you're going to cut or what you're cutting is going to be 32.1/8 to the center line of the bit, which then gives you 1/2 inch on either side, which takes you up to 33.1/8. So you could do that, but you know, the surface itself is always going to be the great, you know, the cutting area is always going to be right at 32.1/8.
Okay, well, good. So Mitz, if you don't mind, would you mind sharing a Carveco screen real quick? And so one of the things, guys, that we noticed that there's a lot of comments about this. Somebody says, well, I took the damn USB drive to my thing and it won't read the file. What the hell is wrong? And there's a lot of frustration. And so we're going to show you in Carveco and in Vectric, you know, the steps that you need. And this will be a very basic shape.
Yeah. And JR, would you mind taking me off the disabling my screen sharing? Right now, it's showing host.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hang on.
No problem. There we go.
Did that do what I needed to do?
I believe so. Let me just go here and let me close out of this. Was a project I was working on earlier with someone else. Okay, so to create a model, you start with your new model. You can set your dimensions for X and Y and your units. Once you have that, you click OK. So
for those who haven't seen this yet, so Mitz, this is Carveco Maker, right?
That is correct. And just kind of as a caveat, Carveco Maker, you can actually do 3D projects. You can't modify them. You need Maker Plus to do that. And if you want to design, you need the full-blown Carveco at right around 20. I think it's $2,200 or $2,400. But Carveco Maker, you can import STLs and import as many as you like to create your own scenes and whatnot. And that's why I like it, because you know, gives it a little bit more character. You know, there's a lot of STL files for sale out there, and you know, I think we've made a lot of the same ones for the more experienced folks that are out here. Mike, I can tell you, I know he does quite a few, and you get a lot of yours from Wave 3D, and you know, the Helping Hand Cross is a particular one that I've seen probably at least 50 people do. So, and like JR said, we're just going to do something basic within Carveco. I'm not going to cover through, you know, step by step what all these icons are, nor am I going to talk through a lot of the project window. But you know, let's just take a basic shape. We'll do a square or a rectangle. The nice thing about this is you can drag it out to what size you want, or you can actually enter the dimensions. So we'll do a 3x3 here, and we'll create that. And then if I wanted to do a second square around that, and let's call this one 6x6. All right, I'd hit F9 to center everything up. So I just if I highlight everything and hit F9, it would center it in my workpiece. And if I want to create a toolpath now, the toolpath that I'll start with first, I'm just going to focus on the center square. I'll highlight it. I'll do an area clear. I'll come in and say, okay, I want this to go down. Let's call it a 1/4 inch. My mouse is acting up here. Sorry about that. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill to do that. You can change your default settings, your step over, your step down, all of that here. For if you're going to want to have that 1/4 inch come up with the same settings all the time, you would change it in the tool database. And if you want to just say, hey, for this project, I'm going to run my end mill a little bit faster, I can change it here. So, you know, I'll change this up to, let's see here, if I were my pen and tell you, I'd put that up to like 350. Okay, and then your material thickness, you just go ahead and set that up as 0.75, and then calculate. And you can see that, you know, just inside the square has been pocketed out. I'm going to just do a quick simulation on that, and you will see that in 3D mode, I'm not sure what the heck's going on with my mouse there, but I don't know if you can see that, but it pocketed that up. Now, if I don't want to do that, let's say I want to pocket between the two squares, then I would just highlight both of them and select that, and then just run the same toolpath again, but this time it's going to know that it has to carve between the two of them, which will give you that piece. So if I were to run the simulation again, now you'll be able to see that there is just between the two is where it pocketed out. So that's just a, you know, down and dirty, quick, simple shape and how we get to it.
And,
so
and for everybody's benefit, I think it would be great if we paused here for a second and just said, so now Mitz has been working on this file, and let's say it's elaborate and he's got an hour of time in it, and he says, oh, I don't want the power to go out and I'll lose my project. So much like any other Windows kind of file, he would go to File and Save As, and he would put it somewhere on his computer that made sense to him. And what he would be saving is the design file. This environment that you see in front of you, this is not yet G code. This is a design file. And I just want to pause just briefly to delineate where we are in the process.
Right. Yes, I agree. So most people just think they're saving the file that has, I've run my toolpaths. And so I'm just going to load this up to the Onefinity, and it's going to run and carve beautifully. It won't. Up until recently, it would lock your system up. It would actually lock your controller up. So if you're saving the project, and in Carve Code, the extension is ART, and vCarve Pro, it's CRV, right, Layne?
Yeah.
And then Aspire, I think it's CRV3D or something like that. Yep.
Okay, so that way,
All right, so
if you lost power, you could come back and you could pick up this project where you are. But at this point, he has the file set how he wants to cut it. And what we're about to see next is how do we get it from the design environment to the machine? And that's the important step that I think a lot of people get tripped up on.
right. So the power just went out on my system, as Jay was talking about. I can go back and open a model now, and it would be that model that I just made. And as soon as I find it here, it's right there, and it'll open it back up. I still have the toolpaths, which is the area clear toolpath, and it's right there. And now what I want to do is I want to export it to my machine, and I don't have Wi-Fi in my shop. So I just copy it onto a USB, but I have to save it someplace on my computer first. So there's the floppy disk icon, and I believe it's very similar on the vCarve Pro or Vectric side. But what it will do is it will bring your toolpaths all up in one window. And I like to save each tool separately for a toolpath, as opposed to trying to do bit changes. If I save them all as one toolpath. But in this particular case, I have it going to my desktop toolpaths folder, and I would save that as test area clear. I have, I like to put down the size of my material that I'm going to be carving and what bit this particular toolpath is for, but I'm going to call this test area clear, and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. 2.5. Okay, so I save that, and then I just will cancel out of that. And if I were to go to second here, let me this little window. I would go to my toolpaths folder and find my toolpaths folder, and I'll find that test file. I'm sorry, my mouse is really, for some reason, it's not working real well. Okay, so I'll come back through, and here's all the toolpaths that I've worked on so far. But there's the test area clear, 1/4 inch end mill. I would just, and you can see how the G code looks, but we won't talk about that this time. But what I would normally do is I just take it and drag it over to my USB port.
We don't see what you're doing right now.
No, it's not showing.
Okay, let's see here. What did I do there?
That's weird. I'm seeing it.
Are you're seeing it?
I am, yeah.
Meeting controls. I'm not sure why it's not coming back up. Sorry, guys. I am still sharing my screen.
You might try unsharing it and then sharing it back, see if it'll grab the other screen.
Okay, we'll do. Stop video. Stop sharing. Okay. And let me try sharing again.
So while Mitz is working on that, so the important part, I think the takeaway here is that you have a design file and you have a G code file. And in both cases of the software that we're going to talk about, the G code file that you need to bring to your machine is that the file ends with a .ngc. So his software here that he's using, the design file would be .art, and that's the whole thing. But just the G code by itself that needs to go to the machine is .mgc. It's an easy way to know if you're bringing the right thing to your machine or not.
And just keep in mind, JR, that my laser uses a G code extension, and the extension doesn't matter with it, but the type file does.
Yeah.
So it needs to be a Onefinity compatible file made with a post processor, but the extension, that way I can always tell when one's marked in G code go for my laser and the NGCs go to I'm going to cut with the router.
I think my JTech needs .gc or something. It's close, but it's not exactly. Yeah, but so
Okay.
So Layne, do you have your computer available to you?
Yes.
Could we do a screen share, and could you replicate what Mitz just did in VCarve,
Yes.
so that we could see the workflow in a different piece of software?
Not a problem. Where's the share at now?
Another thing you guys should do is let people know what a post processor is. I know when I started, I had no idea what the hell is a post processor.
Mike,
And that's part of this beginning.
Yep. Layne, how about the bottom of your window? You should get the.
I had it covered up, so I think I'm back to good now. See if I've got an Aspire screen. Let me know if y'all can see mine.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Vectric screen now. Yep.
Okay, so this is pretty simple. This is Aspire that's exactly the same thing through probably as far back as many revs as I've seen in Aspire VCarve. It's almost exactly the same. Go to create a new file. Same thing, we'll make it same thing he did, 10 by 10. Select your material thickness. I'm gonna 0 at the machine top. Unless I'm gonna be cutting through the material, then I'll switch that to machine bed just for that one tool. And I'm gonna 0 at the lower left corner, no offset. The modeling doesn't matter if you're not gonna do 3D. It's the same as in Carveco. That modeling slider that he showed, it doesn't matter if you're not gonna have a 3D file. It may help on simulation resolution on Carveco, but it won't matter on here. So I tell it okay, and I've got a piece, a work piece here that if you look at my the X down here in this portion of the screen, it'll point and tell you where the cursor is at. So it's at 0, 0. Up here, it's at 10, 10. You can see on the ruler. We'll go do just like Mitz. We'll draw a rectangle. I'm going to tell it he did a 3 by 3. And I'm not going to tell it to create. I'm just going to click out in space, and then where the center of it is where to click. If I want in the lower left corner and attach, I could do that again. I'll remove it. And then he made another one 6 by 6. Well, if I could type right. It's what happens when I don't wear my glasses. So tell it to create, and we just made two squares. I can drag them around. I can move them where I want. I can rotate them. I can hold alternate, rotate it in increments, or I can just leave it like it is. So I'll grab both those, and I will click the white center. If you don't have these, you can come up under options. I'll have to look it up. There's a menu for this, I guess, when you go under locate, it says show common tools on drawing tab. And so it'll put these align objects. So I'm going to click these, and I'm going to tell it to click both of them in center. I can center one to the other one. So if I want this one slightly off center and that 0 to it, I have to select them backwards. I can tell it to center to it, or I can put both these back in the center again. So either way I want. I've got the same squares, and now I'm ready to go make tool paths. So I'm gonna swap up here with the switch to tool path commands. Drag all my people on the other side of the screen. So same thing, I can, if I want to pocket out that center, I'll grab a pocket operation. I can tell it, if I know how deep my material is, I can type it in, or I can put Z divided by 2. And just we'll cut halfway through our material thickness. With this one's already got selected end mill, I can go up and select another end mill, 1/4 inch, set all my parameters. The big thing with this one is make sure that you have a tool number that's repeatable. I'll show you kind of how I do mine. I make tools, end mills are the size of the tool. So a 0.12518 to be 125, a 25 will be 0.25 inch end mill. When I go to V bits, they'll be that size. 3025 will be a 1/4 inch, 30 degree. This one actually should be 3050. And so that way I can tell, when the software prompts me, I know what I'm selecting and I don't make a mistake, because you start making complex carves, you get a lot of bits. It pops up a 2.5 and you're expecting a V bit. You kind of back off and make sure you don't make a bad cut and ruin a piece of wood. So I select the inside of that. I've got my tool selected. It doesn't matter, raster or offset. Either one will work just fine. Tell it to calculate. Preview the tool path. And now we've got our pocket. It's got rounded corners of that 0.125 radius of that 1/4 inch bit. And then just like Mitz was saying, we can close this, go to our 2D view, select both, open this tool path and just recalculate. And I can reset the preview and preview all tool paths. And notice it's the cut, we told it to make a climb cut. And you saw the tool path, it makes a climb cut towards the inside, and then makes a climb cut in the reverse direction on the outside. So you can see the tool path by highlighting this. You see where it goes. That's an easy way to make a quick tool path to go to our machine. And then on our Save Tool Path button, this is where we'll select machine. You'll notice I've got several machines in here. So I pick my journeyman. It only gives me the choice of laser or my Onefinity inch new post processor. If you don't have a correct post processor, you can get on the forum and download it. They keep a current version of it up there. You can ask any of us, we'll have them. And if you don't have it set up, you can go to machine, install post processor, and then just select the file they have, and it will put it in your machine. It will handle it, and it will put it in the right location. Post processor just tells the machine how to integrate to your controller to make it do what it needs to do. I've got several machines, so I've got post processors for each machine that are pretty different. And if I try running one on the other machine, it will make a mess of it.
So Layne, if I can interrupt you for one quick second, so I figured out how to see the questions that are coming in right now.
Okay.
So let me see if there's some specifically related to this. So for some of these, we're going to circle back to, can Onefinity access files on a network drive? I don't think so. So it's total new CAD CAM. I'm exploring 3 different CAD programs, easier to learn. Can Onefinity be run on any CAD CAM as long as it can export a G code? Probably, because that's what the machine needs is G code. I don't know. Have you guys experienced any other type of software? As long as it can throw out a G code, will it work?
I have tested Easel, Carbide Create, Fusion 360. We use SolidWorks at my work. I've used SolidWorks. I've used Aspire, VCarve, all the different versions, and CarveCode. All those have created really good, pretty tight code and have worked well. If you're trying towards Fusion, if you don't already know the software, my recommendation is save it for later. You can get a copy of it for free. It's very complex and it's very easy to make mistakes with. but is probably the most capable software that you can get.
Yeah.
It just, there's some limitations to learning it.
So on that one, Calvin, who asked the question, what I would tell you, Calvin, is that probably the differentiating factor for especially a new user of a CNC machine, you got to have some resources, some places to go ask questions or to go research some answers. And there are some free versions of CAD CAM software out there, but they don't have very much in the way of community-led support, whereas Carveco and Vectric and Easel, as examples, they all have pretty robust community forums where you can go get help if you're stuck. If you end up with one that's kind of an oddball, you might be feeling lonely if you run into problems, I guess is the best way to sum that up.
My only recommendation for software is if you're going to get something, try to master your software, spend some time learning it. A lot of people, when you're waiting for your machine, I tell everybody, learn your software first, start designing your table. Of course, maybe get a few bits and some scrap woods that you can save around. But really learn the software, because when you get the machine you want to cut, and it's frustrating to have to spend the next 2 months trying to learn how to make a square center on the screen. I didn't know the F9 trick with Carveco. Like I said, I just recently got it. I'm learning it. So thank you, Mitz, for that.
Okay.
It's a learning experience.
So then,
there was one other question that came from Nikki, and that's about, you mentioned when you spoke about Carveco that it puts out good G code. What differentiates better or worse G code, and how do we understand problems in the code versus errors we make?
I'm kind of picky on G code. Some of them, the paths the machines use, how much adjustability. I'll show you in this pocket toolpath real quick. The fact you can raster or offset, you can set the angle. I can do a profile pass. I can do a pocket allowance. Those are great things. I can ramp into. I almost always ramp bit diameter. So if I'm using a 2.5 inch bit, I will ramp it 0.25. That way you'll see that bit start down, and you can actually see the ramp a little bit if you switch it to the side view on this. You can see where it ramps it down. So that's kind of a handy thing, is when the software gives you a lot of controllability. That's one of the things Fusion does. The problem is no one explains it. There's not a good place to go learn it. So you can think you're doing something right and it won't work, and you get stuck. It makes very good tool paths because it does adaptive clearing. And what I mean by that is from a machining standpoint, it tries to not engage too much of the tool bit. This is a very technical thing I'm talking about, so don't pay a lot of attention to it. When this bit gets in this part right here, I'll go draw the circle for it real quick. When I go to a 0.25 inch bit, and I put it right here on that thing, you can see where it goes in the corner. Well, that means all this area from right here around to right here, it's going to engage the tool bit, and you'll get your machine will tug and pull and leave a few varieties of things happen when that goes in. Adaptive clearing would go in and carve out a little bit and do little circles and work its way up to that. It's a more complex tool path. It takes longer, but in the end run, it's a lot better for machining. And I'm talking about people that usually machine metals. If you're going to get into aluminum, that's a highly critical thing. If you're getting into steel, it's critical. So that's a very $2 answer for a question that probably should have been answered that technical. But I've done CNC machines for 20 or 30 years in some form, but I've had to write the G code. To have a program that makes this good of G code real quick is and very accurate. You know it's going to work every time. That's what I like. So we'll go back to completing this, and I'll go ahead and show y'all where we're at. I have my tool path. I have it created. Calculate. I name mine a little bit different. I will go I'll go what the problem is, what the program is, test, pocket, 0.25 end mill. And if there's multiple runs, I'll call it run 1. And then same thing, I'll file, save as, test. And so now we've got our program saved. I can go back and reopen it. I've got my tool path. I can go to save tool path. I've got my post processor, and you can select others. And I say save tool path, and I want to do the selected tool path. Notice the selected tool path doesn't have to be checked. The visible tool path does. And if I try to put in more than one, it has a different geometry or different tool number. That's why that tool number is important. It will argue at you. Save tool path. It will pull the name of it off of that tool path. So I'll save that. I'm going to go ahead and copy it. And now I'm ready to go and minimize this and go to, I have to drag my people around the screen, my bottom corner, so I can get to all my files. So I use a program called Search Everything. I can find my file. I can copy it, copy the file name, and then I'm going to start a browser. And I'll push this up. A lot of things going on my screen. So I've got a browser. I've gone and put on here my Onefinity machine, and I've got mine loaded right now. So there's my machine. And all I've got to do is come down here to open the file and paste it and tell it to open that file. This is a problem I have on my machine sometimes, is sometimes it won't take that file the first time. I can see it on the screen on my display. It says test pocket 25 mil. You can see where this is at. You can see where the zero's at. When I take the screen big down here, you can see it looks just like the simulation we had in Aspire. And I'm ready to go. I can hit play right here and run. If I need to move my machine, I've got it zeroed home, but I don't have it zeroed yet. But I can do X4, Y4, and it moves my machine to that location. And so looking over here at my machine, you can see it's moved to my 0. I can throw down a piece of wood, and just that quick, I can be cutting. I leave a copy of this running on my computer in my shop. I have a shop computer, and I have one I use inside my house. So I'll use a Wise Cam to watch my machine run, and I can turn the software on. So if I need to, I can stop it. I can see what's going on. I can see how many minutes it's going to take. 2 minutes and 43 seconds to cut at I don't remember what the feeds and speeds were on this. It's got 187 lines of code, and we're ready to go. Pretty simple.
Okay, well, great. Good job, Layne. We appreciate that. And so again, both those pieces of software, CarveCo and vCarve, have the ability to save the project file. So that's what we're traditionally used to, the file save as, and you give it a name. But then resident in each software, you have a save toolpath, right? That's the thing that you need to bring to your Onefinity, whether it's through a Wi-Fi or a thumb drive or whatever you're doing. That's how you get there. Let me back up just for a few questions here. I don't know how the heck I had that. Just a minute ago, I had that damn chat window blown up big enough I could see it. There was some discussion in the chat about probing a new bit. Yeah, you can just flip the probe over. The probe is the same thickness, the aluminum cube that you get if you buy it from Onefinity. It's the same thickness no matter which way you have it, but if you flip it over, you could zero the probe anywhere in the workpiece, whereas if it's with the ridges down, it has to be in that left corner. of your workpiece in order to fit properly. That was one question. Let me see. If using the same tool in VCarve Pro, can you save all your different tool paths together so it will run together rather than it stopping between each tool path, or do you have to open each individual? So in VCarve, there is a way to merge tool paths as long as it's the same tool. And that is a handy thing. Is there something like that, Mitz, in Carveco?
In Carveco. Yeah, you can do it in Carveco as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so as long as there doesn't need to be a bit change, you can merge tool paths. It's a handy tool. Let's see.
And JR, I don't usually merge tool paths. I just keep them together in the file and select them to, if they have the same geometry and same tool number, I'll just save them together. The downside of that is it will stop between passes and ask you to okay that you're changing the speed or whatever between each pass.
Yeah, I generally don't do that either, but it was a question that I don't know who asked in the chat window over here. Yeah, so yes, it can happen. I can tell you, I'm always in my shop. So in my case, that CNC is just a robot employee, right? So I turn it loose on doing something, but I'm in the shop doing some other task that the machine can't do. So I don't mind. I want to hear it because I can tell you I've broken a number. I have a wall of shame, just like all of us do, of broken bits or screwed up jobs. I don't know what this question means here on the chat. So Chris, if you can unmute yourself and ask this question differently, does the controller have single step ability? I don't know what that means. So if
It does not.
Yeah, I don't
It
know.
does not. Okay, well, it's I've used CNCs for 25 years in machining metal. So we use single step to test a processor. We slowly work line by line through the G code to see if the moves it makes are compatible with our machine, if it's going to do anything crazy. That way we know that the post processor is good. So that's called single step. Single block. I think some machines call it single block.
Okay.
It goes one line at a time.
Sounds like somebody chimed in and said that it's not a current capability. Is that right? Who chimed in there?
Layne did, I think.
Yeah. My other machine does have single step capability. This one does not.
Okay.
It's part of that is the same reason you can't change speeds or feeds while you're running it. But I have found it's not a problem. Usually if I start a file, I'll know right away if I underfed the speeds or feeds or loading the bit apart, and I will just stop the file, lift it out, recalculate it, throw it back in there and restart it right where I was. And it's just a few seconds. It doesn't take very long. It didn't cost you anything. And that'll I'm real big about listening. When you're getting into CNC, listen to the bit, listen to your machine. The sounds it makes will tell you everything.
Yeah.
When you get a bit that's screaming, you probably have too many RPM. You don't have a chip load right. And if you don't know what that means, just don't worry about it right now. You will get there.
Yeah, I would tell you that the first 30 days, if you're not, if the clock springs aren't, puking out of the side of the machine and you're ended up with a cut you can live with, you're on your way, right? As you progress, what you're going to find is exactly what Layne is just saying. You will become in tune. You'll hear the machine speaking to you. You'll hear chatter or you'll hear noises that will mean something to you. And you're just going to figure it out as you go. And as I said at the very beginning of this thing, hey, you're not sitting on the sofa wondering what it would be like. You're out there doing it. So don't worry about it. Just keep trying. And
well, it's kind of like whenever you're running a drill bit, you can explain it to somebody, but the first time you run it, you push too hard and it's not taking a good bite. It's not working well. And next time you don't push hard enough and it just sits there and fries and blackens the end of the bit. You know when it's making good chips, you can see it. It just drills real easy. Your CNC is the same way. When you're getting it right, it will seem almost too easy. When you're getting it wrong, it will seem hard.
Yeah.
I've got my machine set up. If anybody wants to watch a probe,
Yeah.
I set it on. I just using my little dowel rods that stick in here. I threw down a piece of pine wood, get it centered in there. Throw this down, and you can see the bottom square where it fits. Make sure that it's on there. Go down. I'm going to scroll my screen up by hand. Figure out where I'm pointed at now. And I'm going to tell it to probe, and it's going to ask me to touch off. So I'm going to touch it. You notice I don't have a magnet on mine. I've got a spindle. It's got grounds, so it doesn't need the magnet. I tell it to continue. I've got this is a new camera, so I'm trying to figure out which direction I'm pointed. So tell it to continue. The bit's set right. It's 0.25 inch bit. Sorry. And so now it's going down. It'll touch off. If you leave that too high and it airs out, it will stop you and start over again. Don't worry about it. It'll move down now. And sometimes I'll put my finger on it and hold that in place. Sometimes it didn't make any difference. This board has some composite nails in the bottom of it, so this will slide very easily. I use composite nails to hold my work down.
Yeah, and the other thing for those that maybe haven't done this yet, as you run a bit and it gets dirty or it gets sap from your wood on the edges of the bit, it may not make a great contact. So that's another reason why it may be helpful to hold that block in place. And what he's doing there is Z-zeroing the other way.
So I can push this back. Just put it over the block, find you a good spot over it. Again, I'm going to tell it to probe Z. It's going to make me make contact with it. And then down it'll go. Very slow. You can set these speeds, but these speeds are set very well to make an accurate probe. And so I didn't have it very close. I had it probably within 3/4 of an inch. And even with that, it doesn't take very long. Move it out of the way. I'm ready to go. And that way, if I've got material that I'm V-carbon that's not working well across the material, I can run just a portion of it, V-carb that, move it, reprobe it, or I can flatten my wood like I was supposed to.
Yeah.
Either way.
So Jamie Nettles had a question. Jamie, if you're still in the group, unmute yourself. It might be better if you just ask this one out loud, because I don't know that I understand it.
Was it about the SVG files?
Yeah.
I had two. Well, I wasn't sure. I saw that in someone's folder. I saw the files there. So, and I used, for example, Inkscape to create SVG files, and you bring those in and you're able to, once you bring in vector files and I have Vectric, then you would just be able to assign a Z and a tool to it. So in other words, some of the things that instead of doing it in Vectric, some of the just graphics, that you could do that in another. What is that process from the SVG into the
Can y'all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I just real quick, I will go over here and we'll import one in. I'll hit new, tell it new file. I can import right here on that second tab. This one's bitmap and this one's it's vector files. It comes up with different things. You can do the drop down and see what it comes. It could be SVG. DXF is pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just pick one that's in here. I don't even know what's in my folder. Probably pick the most complex stuff. Let me find something real quick. I use search everything. It looks on my whole drive and finds all SVG files, so I can find something that's doesn't matter where it's at. I don't really lose it. So I got a Texas basic shape. So I'll paste that in there. Well, of course, it didn't like that one. I'll find a tree. So open up, paste it. And there's an SVG file that I imported directly, and it's no different than the rectangle that we did earlier. I can drag and drop it. I can move it. I can put multiples of these. So if you have one that's a tree and one that's a deer, you can copy them around. The toolpath is the same thing. So if I want to pocket this out, Control A, grab all of it, pocket it. I'll pick 2 bits, so you can see a 2-bit path. I'll select the first, go back and get a 1/8" bit. It's a little harder tonight because my window of picture of people is across my screen. I'm going to minimize that. So now I've got 2 bits in there. So when I tell it to calculate this, it's going to calculate in Pocket. You can see what it'll do. I hit preview. And now we're pocketing that. That's as much detail as I've got with those 2 bits. And you can also change the order of them, and that will make a difference too. Calculate. And you'll see how it makes the clearance bit the 125 when I did it the wrong way. I go back and put that other bit top. You want big bits to small bits. Now, if I wanted more detail, I can add an 0625, a little bitty bit. It won't go very deep. Let's say we just want to go 0.1 deep. And this will get some more detail out of that.
In the trees, right? Okay.
So now you're starting to get more out of this.
Oh, nice.
Let me reset the preview all. And so it runs pretty quick. You can highlight over the top of these pockets. It'll tell you everything about, it tells you the tool. It tells you the time it runs. You're going to run that first bit for 17 seconds. So it'll take longer to put it in than it'll almost take to run it. If I'm doing that, a lot of times I'll just go back and remove that bit and calculate again. And it will not make my total time much longer because I'll make up that difference. It'll take 4 minutes to run that instead of 1.5 minutes. But it saves me a bit change. So there's the file. If you want to see this, when you get up, when you highlight preview toolpath, I can actually color that in say set all, and it will color all the toolpaths. Let me calculate again. Set all, reset, preview. And so now you can see the design a little bit easier. And you can see how deep it is. If you hover your mouse over it, that Z depth up there down in the corner right here will actually tell you how deep it's cutting. So the surface is 0 and we're cutting 0.1 deep. Now, if you want to do a little bit more advanced, I can go back and the same thing. We can just grab this same and do a V carve, and I'll leave the 1/8" bit in a 60-degree V bit with the same 0.1 flat. Tell it to calculate, reset it, and preview all. Actually, I don't want to preview all. I want to preview visible. So preview visible. I will set those colors, and you can see now it's got the little edge on it and gives it a little bit more detail. It gets more detail because that V bit can get in the tighter spots. So that's why with the software, you can learn how to play around with it and get a lot of good. And this is like a store-bought SVG that's come off of one of my sets.
Yeah, and Jamie, I think maybe to your question, so there are a lot of folks, and there's a lot of opportunities out there on places like Etsy and other places where you can buy SVG files, and that just stands for scalable vector graphics. And the machine or the software is typically smart enough to know when I bring that in, it's going to look the same as the square or the circle that we were using as an example earlier. It's just obviously a lot more complex, right? And
Right.
but the software can absolutely use those SVG file types as a way to establish what the vector is that it should be cutting.
That's really helpful. That's what I use SVGs for other things on a laser and embroidery machine and other things. So knowing how to do that and keeping with the same software I already use to do that, instead of learning everything in Vectric is really helpful, because, you know, other things I may start off with bitmap and then do all of that. So that's really nice to see that. I appreciate you going through that.
Yeah,
those steps.
anytime, because sometimes just seeing it,
Mhm.
we assume that everybody knows how to do this and it's the same for everybody, but it's really not. I just grabbed a little panel that's in V-carve out, and if you want to cut the shape out, I can cut the pocket, or I can delete the pocket tool path, and I can come in and put a profile to Z, and I usually do plus 0.003 and go 3/1000 deep. Select a end mill. I use my little mini Jenny a lot. I will actually edit this and make sure it goes in one pass, because I'll cut it in one single pass. Calculate. And when I preview, it'll cut it out. I can double click outside the area, and now I see what my part's going to look like.
I like that's thank you for showing me. That really makes a difference to see that in operation.
No problem.
So for all the newer folks, right? So Layne, you know, has a design and obviously a lot of CNC experience, right? And you might be, and I know that Chris does too. That's what he does for a living. But this is a whole different kettle of beans, where it might be super different than what you're used to in a workflow in your either wood shop or your creativity mindset or whatever. But I guess the one thing I'd encourage you, so we just watched, you know, Layne blow through a whole lot of knowledge, right? He's got a library that's pretty deep and was able to just kind of navigate quickly through all that stuff. And my encouragement would be, you're going to be there too someday, and not very far from now, because as you go through and you get repetition and a little bit of muscle memory, this will become, so Mike Pagnatelli, you know, he does some crazy stuff. You know, if you see him in the Facebook group too, you know, he obviously has a lot of depth of knowledge and things that he, you know, throws on his machine and comes off with. None of us started out knowing all that, the end game. We all started somewhere. And so I think that we have gone through all the questions. One is the diagonal capacity of the woodworker X50. So the woodworker is going to be 32 1/8 square, right? So, you know, somebody that's good at math, what's the diagonal of 32 1/8?
Got it right here. For
trigonometry.
yeah.
Yeah, I was stoned during algebra. So.
45 1/4.
Okay, so
and for the journeyman, it's 57.6.
Okay, so Julianne, I hope that was helpful to you. So let's see. And so if I have missed keeping up with any of these questions here, please type it back in real quick, or just unmute yourself at this point and just say, hey, I have a question. Or because we are almost at the 1.5 hour mark, and I had anticipated, about an hour. So why don't, just feel free to unmute yourselves at this point. And if you have a question, let's just have it out. And I really am hopeful that this was helpful. And I really want to give a special thanks to Mitz and Layne for, agreeing to do this and share their time as they've been so kind over a long period of time on the Facebook group, helping people. So don't let this, time pass. So if there is an extra question or something that we might have missed in the rush of trying to keep up with the chat window over here, unmute yourself and go nuts. Let's get bananas. It's Friday night.
I had another quick question. The toolpath databases, I just have my machine. I'm just getting it all set up. Where do you get that? Is it just one standard file? Does it come with the software?
You can go to the manufacturer website. So if you're using Whiteside's bits as an example, or using Amana bits as an example, I know that bitsandbits.com, they just released a full database. Now I'll tell you about Bits and Bits. They do a lot of reselling of Whiteside's bits. So I don't know what kind of bits do you have? Do you have them all from one place, or
I've got 2 or 3, but that's just was my question. Is there one universal, one file? I didn't want to pull them all together and then find out if someone stored it somewhere, but that's helpful if I'll go and retrieve those.
On VCarve and Aspire, they come with some standard tool files. Most of them you're just going to copy over, because any end mill, whether it's down, up, or whatever, you can save one and call it a down, but it'll be the same file, and it's real easy. Just hit the copy button, rename it, and that way you can use them and set feeds and speeds. And if I have an unusual bit that I don't want to push fast, my Mini Jenny doesn't like to go fast, but it likes to cut. So I have one called Mini Jenny. It's a 0.125 compression bit. But if you're doing the odd bits like bowl bits, you'll want to download those if possible, either the tool file, and I'm going to give you a warning here for Aspire and VCarve. They'll let you download the entire Amana tool base or the Whiteside tool base and download it. Don't do that unless you want your computer slow.
Okay.
It makes a giant file. It has to load every time that loads.
That's very helpful. Okay.
So load the one you need, and you can do one called a form tool. So you can make the profile of the bit and make the right half of the profile in the shape. Generally, they'll have those downloaded on like Tools Today or somebody, where you can download as a DXF, delete all the rest of the stuff when you import or open the DXF, and then just save half the file. Make sure when you click on it, it will give you the XY size of it. Make sure if it's a 1/4 inch bit, that half bit is an 1/8 inch wide, and then hit Form Tool and go to it, and it will just suck it in and use that shape. So you can make any shape bit that you need.
Oh, nice. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I might do a separate video just on tool database and bits, because it's complicated, and nobody from Vectric has spent a lot of time getting that kind of right in one place.
All right.
Yeah, nice.
So
Aaron Gee.
So we'll go in order here. Dale Patterson, I dig that comment. Donna, adding the JTech laser, you have a small laser etcher and the belt drive is used for faster raster speeds. How does the Onefinity work in this respect? Adding the JTech laser to the unit, I have a smaller laser etcher and the belt drive is used for faster raster speed.
I have a K40. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a K40 laser etcher, and they're always saying it's a belt drive and it can do the rasters. How does that affect with the lead screws in the unit? Can that keep up with that speed back and forth to do the raster for major laser etching?
Yeah, I use my laser a lot. I've got a JTech, and I'm fixing to test out the opt laser on my Onefinity. You're limited by speed anyway. It's not. I've got a CO2 laser as well.
Right.
And the CO2 moves at a pretty rapid pace.
Exactly.
Pretty typically, these move at about, if any real speed that you're going to burn at, it's going to be about 70 inches. Inches per minute. That's not very fast. So no, you won't get up to the speed limit of the tool very quick. Now rapids, it'll rapid at whatever mine set up at 450 inches a minute, 400 inches a minute. but the rapids aren't really the big deal. You want to be able to, it's whatever you can burn at. Now, I
Right.
will say, as you start tuning your machine up, you can turn the jerk settings up to about 5,000 with the laser. Beyond that, it starts shaking it to death and makes it not straight lines. But at 5,000, it will shorten the burn time significantly.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
and I've probably got about 100 hours with the laser.
Yeah, so that's what I was just trying to figure out, whether I'd get a regular machine just for laser etching and stuff and then not worry about putting it on the Onefinity. I do like being able to do the 4-foot span, which would be great.
It depends. I've got a $20,000 gravograph. It paid for itself real quick. It's a very good laser. It's an industrial. It gets run out. I mean, I've run 8 or 10,000 cups through it. That's a lot of cups. It's good for rotary. It's good for that kind of stuff. It's very high speed. It's good for it. It does more of a cutting type, or cutting the wood away, where the JTech and fiber lasers tend to burn. So if you want a burn look, that more blackened look, you'll get it with the JTech. It will not be the fastest, but I like having it all in one place because I can do a board, flip it over, put a keyhole in it,
Right.
put my logo on back and ship it.
Yeah, so that's what I
quick.
have it right there, right? So, okay, that answers.
And my CO2, which costs a lot, only holds it's 11 by 17 cut size, but the material that goes in it is only 12 by 18, and you cannot put a fraction of an inch larger than that. And there's no pass through, there's no way to get it on it. It's just, that's what it does.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get the laser for the Onefinity, just to add it on there and have bigger space.
All right.
When I got mine, I didn't think I would like it. It has been quite a boon. I would have been sad had I not.
Yeah.
So Doug Bishop also asked, do you recommend ordering the QCW frame for the waste board? I'll chime in and tell you that I had ordered one and then realized it wasn't going to work for me. I don't know. Does anybody in the group have one and have some thoughts on it?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I have the
All the cool
QCW.
stuff.
I don't know about all of it, but I have the QCW. I also have the wall mount. I'm not going to talk about the wall mount tonight. Mitch knows why. And we're going to probably do a video together about that, so we can kind of put all that information and my discoveries in one place. But I do like the QCW. I ordered my machine in March, got it in July. When the QCW was announced in June, I went ahead and bought it. And so I was going to wait for the QCW to come, but then saw the shipping tables changing. So I went ahead and just slapped together a table. And it was a sturdy temporary table. So I went ahead, and once I got the QCW, I put it together, set it on the table. And I will say that it is stiff and it doesn't move when that machine gets to dancing. And I had my jerk settings up to 15,000 and I was running some pretty quick cuts. It doesn't move. It's sturdy, that thing, and it doesn't slide around on the table. And it makes for a really clean setup too. What I like also is, you know, if you have your machine mounted directly to a table and your Y, the Y blocks are, you know, what do you say, 1/8 of an inch, maybe a 1/16 off of the tabletop, right? So if you have anything that falls down on the table, like for me, I had a router wrench when I first was like on my first cut. I set my router wrench down, and then of course the Y block pinned it to the table and threw off my cut, and the machine screamed and I thought I killed it. Well, the QCW, that Y block is I would say a good 3-4 inches off the table. And that makes for a nice tabletop, as well as you get a couple inches, maybe 1.5 inches of space underneath that you could slide some things if you're using it on the tabletop. So it was kind of cool to have a new storage area, which a person could easily come up with some sort of a thin tray that they could slide in and out underneath their QCW if they're using it on a tabletop.
I'm sure Matt is working on it right as we speak.
I've got a recommendation on that, just FYI, and I won't tell you this from personal experience of me not knowing what I'm doing, but I laid my phone down where he's talking about in between the rail and the work piece come over and the dust boot bumped it over and it came back and drove in. And I just don't want to say how powerful a Onefinity is, but it destroyed an iPhone. It utterly destroyed an iPhone.
Did you videotape that, Layne?
I did not. I may have said some bad words. It's probably a good thing I didn't get videoed.
Yeah.
It was a 2-week-old brand new iPhone.
All right. So then Mickey Mallet asks, how can you tell what's a decent quality resolution on files you download off the internet? And that's not something I've been able to figure out ahead of time. So anybody have any thoughts on that? I'm pretty good at buying dirty files that have nodes everywhere. And I don't seem to have good luck with buying.
I will just say that I download a lot of stuff off the internet. It just find a picture and I'll go make the file. You get real good at node cleanup and node editing if you do that. And a lot of stuff you buy on Etsy is not much better. It's pretty rough. I can go through a quick demo if anybody wants to see. I'll probably save it for next time, but it's you can grab an item real quick and do a little quick cleanup and have a nice image. It's real good if you want an image like a Christmas tree or something that a nativity, that's something you can throw out there real quick. And there's a lot of good images out there, but an SVG is scalable. So whatever resolution it has at a 45-inch by 45-inch, it will have is a little 2-inch by 2-inch. A bitmap, it's got what it has, whatever the original resolution is, and you can't fix that. You can there's some things you can do to try to enhance it, clean it and all that, but really you're just kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
Do you create your own 3D files?
Me, yes.
What do you use?
Aspire.
Okay.
I made a boomerang this week. Never made a boomerang. Seemed like fun. I made guitar. I made it for a wall hanging, so I'm not going to fly that one. I'm going to make another one and fly the one I make that I'm not selling. But yeah, it came out really good. It looks like a boomerang. It's 24 inches across. It's great big, but I'm afraid it's going to break something when I throw it.
I hope it's not you.
So Mitz had sent me a note that said Dale had a question, and I'm not sure if we had gotten to it yet. Dale, are you with us still? And what's your question?
Yep, I'm here. I had a couple, but the main one was yesterday I had a bit go crazy out of my collet and drive down into my beautiful new wasteboard. I'm real familiar with routers and collets and cleaning them, keeping them quite clean and putting the bits in fairly tight. But for some reason, this bit just went crazy and slipped almost all the way out before I hit the oh shit button. Does anybody have any tips on working with keeping things tighter or cleaner with a Makita? I don't know what I did wrong. I thought I did everything right.
This is Layne. I'm not a big fan of the Makita collet. I've got ER11 and I guess these are 20. You can look at it here, and even on that, I guess y'all can see the little bits of dust that's in. I just pulled this off a machine. So I take them out and blow them out every time inside the collet, inside there. I know that Makita doesn't have as many fingers, and so it's a lot more critical that your bit be actually bit sized. If it's supposed to be 0.25, 0.246, which is a lot of bits, I guess that's the raw stock they got, tends to cause them to be slip quicker. But I would cleaning them with alcohol, the bits, cleaning the blowing out. I keep a air compressor over here that's built into my shop. I blow them out every time because I got away from routers the first time because of brushes and collets. And the ER collets, I don't think I've ever had any of them slip.
Thank you, Layne.
Yeah, I
Another
agree with what. Go ahead.
Is go ahead and caliper your bits. Make sure that they're, because sometimes you get some Chinese bits or any other bit that may just be slightly undersized.
Well, Mitz, speaking to that, some of the Chinese stuff, especially eBay, it will say it's a 1/4 inch, but it may be a 6 millimeter, which is short.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So Dale, what I'd tell you is like Layne. So I have a pretty good habit of I'll take my collet nut off and take the collet out of my router because he's 100% right. An ER11 or an ER20 collet has more individual fingers in it than I don't know what the Makita has. I think it's 5 sections to it. So it's gonna have more surface area, but it's susceptible to dirt and there's a lot of dust that can get up in there. So anytime I'm changing a bit, the collet and the nut both come off, and I just kind of knock them on my work table. I don't go crazy. I'm not as dedicated as Layne. I don't blow them out every time. But then to Mitz's comment, literally every 250 thousandths end mill that I have measures at 248 thousandths. I don't have one that measures 250 true. So just tighten the shit out of it and send it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Does QCW add any rigidity to the full CNC unit? I don't have one, so I can't comment. So
Kirby addressed that one. It does add rigidity. I don't know if it adds any, but it doesn't take any away.
Okay.
I'm sure it probably, from an engineering standpoint, it probably has to help any mass that you add to the system, especially I've seen what they're building these out of. They're pretty stiff. I would have to think that any of that just helps. Just like building a table, a torsion box table, it will be stiffer inherently than a non-torsion box. And does that make a difference? Maybe, maybe not. But everything helps when you're doing tolerance stack up.
I think that one of the things that people seem to struggle with is getting the machine itself square. I would be curious, for the people who have put a QCW together, have you found that the mounting pods where the feet go, does it force the machine square? Because you can put it together and have it be a parallelogram on a regular work surface, right? So I think that's probably the biggest thing that it's going to help people with is keeping it square.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about the question, because you're tying all those 4 corners together. So that's why I was just wondering if it adds any rigidity to it.
So I can answer and help on that one. My experience was, if you look at the feet of your machine, you'll notice there's kind of an arch, and the QCW has the, I guess, male side to that arch. So first of all, it sets down on there and lines up, and then the process to getting it squared up is similar to the way Onefinity instructs you to mount to the table by, first mounting your, bring the gantry forward, mount the 2 front bolts, and then push the gantry to the back and then mount those. And then that pretty much squares it up. Now, I haven't checked. I haven't been as particular as other people are with bringing out squares and measuring and getting down to the thousandths, which I probably should, but I'm a newbie myself. But that's my experience, is that, yeah, it just kind of naturally lines up, and I thought that was impressive.
Okay. Have you had a chance to measure the diagonals of the machine? I mean, that's the easiest thing, is go inside to inside or some common measurement across the diagonals to see if they are the same.
I haven't yet, but what I'm going to do, actually, Mitz knows about this. I have my machine wall mounted on the QCW, but I had to take it apart to do some repairs. And so now I'm gonna experience what it's like to mount the machine to the QCW while it's mounted on the wall. And I will go ahead and take measurements once I do that, see how it comes out.
Yeah, I was just curious if you find that it forces it to be square or not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, JR. I think I told you I got my QCW the other day. Unfortunately, it's attached from below as opposed to attached from above. But that's one of the first things that when I put it together and put my machine on it, I did do that corner to corner, and it was right down to the 32nd of an inch. And so it was really, really good.
Good. Okay, so Aaron asks, I know it's a beginner question, but could you guys do feeds and speeds meeting one day? That would be a difficult topic, I think, to do in this environment, other than splashing up some, so there's a difference between showing a chart that says this is what it should be, and this is what, this bit, this many flutes at this speed at this inches per minute should equal this. My feeling, and I'd ask the other fellows to chime in, I'm going to look at my spoil board and I'm going to look at the size of the chips that are coming off my machine, and I'm going to listen to it more than I'm going to reference a chart. And now I'm going to tell myself a little bit, I'm not super scientific. As long as it doesn't sound like I'm murdering my machine, and I've got good chips, and when I am in between bit changes, I will physically touch my bit to make sure that it's not hot to the touch, which is a great indication, right, of how the bit is cooling. I don't know. What do you feel like that could be accurately addressed in this format? I'm not sure.
Since I calculate all my bits, and I do also calculations for Cody for the Jenny bits, and I do some for other people as well. It's a very technical thing. The quickest, easiest way is if you use the new V-carb. If you're on 11 and stuff, it does calculate the chip load for you if you put the correct number of flutes in. And the chip load, if you're staying within a range of you can look at a chart on those and get pretty close. I tend to try to push bits, so I push them extremely hard. I bet I've had this year 2,000 people tell me you can't do that with the bit, and I posted the video. So it's part of just getting to learn your machine. I've run an 1/8 inch bit, 3/4 inch deep in ply, and just cut out stuff that looks clean and nice. You can't go very fast with it. You'll get tool deflection because there's more than chip load to it. Tool deflection, there's chip removal rate, surface speed. There's a lot of things to that. Stick out, how much it sticks out of the collet, and then how much cutting length there is.
Yeah. So I guess to answer the question, I'm not so sure that could be covered in a way that would be helpful in this environment. To be honest with you, go break some bits and then you'll have it figured out.
And just an example on that, I have 380 different bits. If you like bits, I just got in a set of bits for cabinet doors today. So spent $600. I'll have to find out how those cut. I know what they should cut at, but everyone's different. Amana bits tend to scream a little bit. You can put them in your router machine and you can't run it hard and fast enough to make them happy. So if you're just willing to deal with that, they do last pretty good and they cut okay. They do break when they start screaming.
Yeah.
So there's tricks to each one. Different brands, different coatings. It's just part of learning the game. And I don't know that there's as much science as I'm based. I don't think there's an easy way to put that all together that would.
So I tried to tell somebody this the other day, and it really kind of boiled down to, I said, well, how much does a wet dog weigh? That's about like that whole topic, right? I mean, you just have to feel your way through some of that. I'll be honest. So let's move on. I have the Jenny bits and have heard it can cut in one pass. I'm doing 8 to 10 passes. Just want to see how to speed things up a bit. I have the Jenny bits. I love them. I can tell you that 8 to 10 passes, if you're cutting, 8/4, material, maybe, but if you're cutting 3/4 inch, so this is from Aaron, so I don't mean, but maybe Aaron, if you can expand on that, what are you cutting that you're taking 8 or 10 passes to do? Are you still here? Aaron?
Yes, I'm still here. Sorry. I'm just 3/4 inch plywood. Just my cutouts.
Okay.
And yeah, sometimes it says, anywhere from 6 to 10 passes.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to go too fast, break a bit, but I was kind of curious.
Is that a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch? What are you talking about?
A 1/4 inch.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I can tell you that I'm a little bit impatient. I'd cut 3/4 inch in 2 passes, probably at about 100 inches per minute is kind of where I'm comfortable. Now I know that.
Okay.
I cut about 150 sheets of plywood a year up into little bitty bits for cabinets. And I won't generally get under 100 inches per minute on any bit, but the Jenny cut really good. It didn't like to cut real fast. It cut 150 full depth.
So you're cutting 3/4 inches depth of cut at 150-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if I go down to an 1/8 inch, the mini Jenny, I probably would not push it full depth and ply. I think you'll break it.
Yeah.
It's got a weak spot there where the flute turns. Just realize that it's not made for that. I have other bits that are better, but I take 1/8 inch bits all the time up to about 0.84 deep. I have 0.85 cutting depth, so I'll cut all the way to the edge of that.
Wow.
In a single pass. About 85 inches a minute, 55 plunge.
Mitz, I know you have some Jennies.
Thank you.
What do you cut with your 1/4 inch bit?
My 1/4 inch bit, I'll generally run them anywhere between 150 and 200. If I'm doing a single pass or single cut, probably in that 120 to 130 range with a 1/4 inch.
Yeah. So I think, Aaron, unless anybody has something they want to chime in with, yeah, I think you could save yourself a fair amount of time by increasing your depth of cut by quite a bit. Yeah.
The minimum I recommend is bit diameter deep to start out with, and then start increasing from there. You'll see when it starts deflecting or you don't get as accurate of cuts. Again, feeds and speeds, also talking about that. Cut quality is always on my #1 list. So if I'm going fast enough, I'm messing up cut quality. The rest of it doesn't matter. I'm not going to stand it for 3 extra hours.
Yeah.
So I will find a feed and speed that fits what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You go more shallow if you're working with hardwoods?
No, I take an 1/8 inch 0.84 deep in walnut.
Okay.
All right. So then Calvin is asking about the best dust boot, as in durability, visibility. I've heard complaints about the Onefinity dust boot, but also some good comments. I've heard of Pone CNC, which may have a more durable one. So I'm going to tell you, I think in my case, I think it depends on what kind of dust system you're running. If you're running a shop vac, or you're running a 4-inch system, a 6-inch system, I'll start and I'll say that I'm running 6-inch mains down to 4-inch at the tool. So I run a Pone version 7 because it's got 4 inches directly at the cutter head. But I was not unhappy with the Onefinity one, other than it was choking my dust collection system. So I had to always leave another dust, a blast gate open. So this Pone version 7 allows me to feel good about having just one blast gate open. So, but that's my choice. But I'm not running a shop vac, and I know some people are. So I think it depends on your situation a little bit. Mitz and Layne, what are you guys running?
Well, I've been testing out the Nick Knopfsinger dust boot. It's working fine. I don't have any complaints. I just wish that, sometimes it could swing out of the way. So when I'm, actually working at the router head, it wasn't, but the Pone CNC is the same way.
Yeah.
So how about you, Layne?
I'm using the version 7. I like it. I'm kind of picky. There's not a lot of room behind the spindle. So you're not going to get a lot of options on what to use unless you make it yourself. I've got dust boots laying all over here, and I've broken all my Onefinity ones. You have to know the way I run my shop. A lot of times I'm dropping stuff on there. My dust hose, I didn't lengthen it out until recently when I went to the new larger 48-inch wide. So I was pulling on the hose, and when it got out to the extents, it yanked it into the bit. And boy, that bit does a lot of damage on that little sucker. So I've got 2 of those broken on my floor over here right now, and I just haven't bothered to get another one. So I tried that version 7. There's things I like about it up and down. I'm not quite there and found the perfect setup yet, but mostly with this new air-cooled spindle, the reduced portion on the bottom is too long, and so you don't get enough bristles down past the tool length, and so you're requiring your dust collection to work really hard to try to get all the chips picked up.
Yeah.
The water cooled did not have that problem, by the way. It's just the air cooled have that extended body.
Okay.
Hey, I've got a question, if you don't mind, Layne.
Sure.
This is about the JTech. I went ahead and got it. You had mentioned some way that you are ventilating with dryer duct hose, and so I'm set up. I've got the 4-inch dryer duct hose, and I went ahead and bought that little black 195 CFM fan to go with it. So how do you bring it down to your machine?
I don't have it. I've taken it loose right there. It's sitting over in the corner. You can't even get around in my shop over there. But it just runs down the wall, and I turn it in the back of the machine, and I have a small piece of tie strap that hooks it onto the back of the machine. It just drags around with the machine, just loose behind it, but it follows it, and it's enough air to move and keep that cleaned up.
Okay.
I don't require much more. It keeps all it stops the smoke smell in here, so I know it's working.
Okay. You're not getting sick from toxic fumes.
Well, and this is an important one too with all the new people on here. I went to go cut. Somebody brought me and said, "Can you make this material into a driving disc?" I did not look at the material before I started lasering on it. It was vinyl. It makes a toxic chlorine gas, and it will kill you. You just need to know that straight up. If I did not have good dust extraction and stuff to suck those out of here, I think I might not have as lucky of a time. The way you know it did that was everything that smoke touched rusted in about 30 seconds. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Chrome stuff just rusted. I threw away collets that just rusted, bits that just rusted up.
Dang.
There was one sitting in the machine, and it just destroyed it. So do make sure what you're lasering, do not ever laser vinyl. It's a bad product. I know people that do that for a living, and they have big filtration, and they throw their machines away about every 2 or 3 months. They just waste them out, but they do a high volume, and they know what they're doing. But yeah, make sure that if it's not something you're sure about, ask somebody. So
telltale sign of that is green flame. If you're hitting green flame, don't cut it. Also, you could put a charcoal filter on the end of your shop vac or whatever, and it'll suck in and filter out the fumes.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I probably, like I said, it's just one of those. It looked like it was just a piece of plywood. I threw it down. It didn't feel quite like plywood, but I should have known better.
I did that yesterday with the big laser, and it was flaming green everywhere, and the smoke was very thick black, and it was a get out of the shop now.
Right. So on that topic of filters, if you don't have the ability to send the exhaust outside, I noticed obviously all of this stuff that we can buy from Amazon is sold as solutions for grow tents, right? And they have filters that go with that 4-inch hose. Are those, do you think, does anybody know, are those good enough to filter and give us safety?
I have a friend with not the Glowforge, but the Glowforge copy. I don't remember which one it is. And it came with a canister to clean it up. and they use it in their house and no, you cannot smell it. So I
Okay.
assume it works fairly well.
So
The
is
canisters do
it
have to be replaced pretty often.
right? Is that the same thing as what they sell as grow room filtration?
I don't know. I haven't seen those other than just on pictures, but I would assume it wouldn't be far from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, obviously nobody's making a claim that could get in trouble, but there are. So it sounds like if you look, there's probably going to be an option besides ventilating outside, but
Sure.
for certain, we need to be getting exhaust out of the shop. And honestly, it was cheap. I mean, that little fan was $30 and I bought two 25-foot long dryer duct hoses. It was a kit for 16, I think. It was really cheap, and you can't put a price on safety. And this isn't this is not a joke. It sounds like we don't want to burn stuff that'll kill us.
I put a Wise outlet on mine, and I just turn it on and off with a Wise outlet. I use those all over my shop. Turn the compressor on and off, and it works great. I can hit one button, shut my whole shop down in 30 seconds.
Yep, exactly what I'm doing.
I put a link to what you should not laser in the chat over there. JTech has one on their website, but I put the link over there.
There are places that make it especially vinyl just that can be safe for it as well. Other thing not to do that I've heard is real leather, that your house will smell like an abattoir for a long time. Not to.
Must be
I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Sound like a crematorium.
Those are great.
They said you can't even get it out of the laser itself, that it's really, really hard to get rid of. So
one of the reasons you want to vent the smoke, though, is that smoke will go onto the lens, and then you won't be able to cut as well. It'll lose power. So the key to getting nothing about killing you, but just making that smoke away from that lens so it stays as potent. And it'll get smoke on it eventually. It's going to happen, and you just want to take a Q-tip with like some isopropyl alcohol or something and clean off that lens every once in a while. I have to do it all the time on the big laser. I do it probably every other job or so. I just quick swipe, clean it off, and go, or you'll notice significant power loss because of that.
Okay, good tip. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, I'm not seeing any newer questions. Anybody else have anything else to add? I know we scheduled an hour and we've gone 2, so I like that a success for this meeting.
Been a fun group.
Okay, JR had to step away. Oh, no, he's back.
No, I'm back now. I'm sorry. And my wife is in Florida on a weekend with her sisters, so I had to take her call to say goodnight. But yeah, so I think this has been really good. And again, I want to say a special thank you to Layne and Mitz, who not just for tonight, but have been really, fantastic advocates for everybody's advancement and moving forward, at least as far as, the past 15 months or so that I've been around the Onefinity, and, really appreciate everybody taking the time to come and, share their experiences and questions. Some of the follow-up things that I'm seeing are maybe dust collection could be a topic for a future video. And so I would suggest, if you could, if you're interested in another version that maybe goes to the next level, another meeting like this, if you had ideas for topics, that would be a great place to maybe make comments. These are the things I'd love to talk about next time. Things like dust collection came up, feeds and speeds, which I still feel like would be a very difficult topic to cover here. It sure feels like that's one of those that you just have to have your ear to your machine when you're running it to kind of gain that experience over time. There are things that Onefinity is capable of that I know, as an example, a Shapeco or another machine that maybe isn't as rigid is just flat not capable of, just because of the lack of rigidity. And I'm not, speaking poorly about those machines, but I'm just saying you can get more out of this machine. So it really And I think Layne is a perfect example. I mean, he regularly posts about, you know, how he'll push his bit to what I would probably be, you know, concerned about. I'd be worried that I'm going to break it, but you know, he's really taking it outside the envelope there and pushing his machine to give him the most efficiency he could. So I think it really comes to that particular topic as well, is just knowing over time, right? You got to spend time with your machine. You've got to make some cuts. You've got to not be afraid to, you know, have a project not work out, and just do it, right? And again, I would just encourage you guys and say it's awesome that you're out there doing it. You're in your shops or wherever you're working, trying new stuff all the time. I mean, it puts you ahead of everybody else who's afraid to try. And I just think that's awesome. So Mitz, Layne, any parting comments before we wrap up this 1 hour meeting 2 hours later?
I want to know what Ben Myers thinks. What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
About,
You've got a lot of experience.
well, you already know I've ditched everything else and I own a Onefinity.
Yeah, but you've got to see the bad and the good and the other. I mean, to be real, and you run a lot of different equipment. What do you think about this format and what we could do to make it better?
Oh, of this, well, I didn't get into it till very late, so I've only seen the last 20 minutes or whatever. But yeah, this is great. I'm sure this is great for new users who've never used a machine or starting to use a machine. And I think it's great to connect with other experienced users like you guys. And even though some of us are more experienced than others, it's good to hear from other experienced users too, to see what their workflow is. Because I think everybody's workflow is different. And you got the 3-4 guys here that are the main guys that started all this. And probably every one of you is doing something differently than the other. And none of them are specifically the right way to do things. It's just your way of doing things. And that's what I found a lot. You know, I do a lot of YouTube and I show what I do, and everybody comes to me thinking that's the way to do it. And it's not. This is the way I figured out how I'm doing my thing. And it's just, hey, let me help you. Let me show off what I'm doing. And maybe that'll help you find your thing. And that's what I think, it's where everybody's finding their own path. And this is great to see that there are different paths to take to get to results.
Well, I appreciate it. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but you do come with a whole different set. And we had talked about before, you know, with like, I like a spindle, but he made a very good point that that's not really for everybody. You can put the router on and just make great cuts day one.
My biggest point, I think maybe my biggest selling point, because a lot of my YouTube stuff is geared to the person who's never touched anything or in the very beginning. Experienced users like to talk about the machine, and that's who unexperienced users are looking to. And I fear that the learning curve is great, and I want to do something like these guys have been doing something for 15 years and they know the ins and outs, makes it to where just CNC in general is overwhelming. And I always push people to be like, just use the machine. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to fail, you're going to break something, but in every single situation there, you're going to learn a valuable lesson, better than if you were just told by somebody something. Just like the spindle versus the Makita router. I am a proponent for the Makita router 100% of the time, but that's because you stick it in and you push the power and it's on, and you don't think about it ever again. And I've had the spindles, and if that's what I have running over here all the time. But I will always recommend a Makita router to everybody else to start out with, because you put it in, you press the power, it's going to cut something, and you don't have to worry about the learning curve of getting all the, you know, the VFD set up right and all the stuff that I still don't really fully understand, having made a video showing off how to do it. But my video was literally, this is how I figured it out. But getting over those humps of making you cut things, cut. That's what I really want to be a proponent of, is don't worry about the flatness of your wasteboard and chasing this 0.006 of an inch, you know, perfection. If you've only cut your wasteboard, who cares? Cut something cool and cut it more and cut it more. So that's I'm trying to give that out as a, don't look to the 15-year-old man and want to jump from the first month of your use to the 15-year-old guy or girl who's been cutting, cut right now and learn as you make the mistakes, and you'll get there quicker than if you're just told something, I guess.
I'm gonna
And
tell
you'll have a lot more joy in making something other than a really flat wasteboard that the very next cut you're gonna plunge right into because you made some stupid mistake.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick something up there about Ben too. He doesn't know this. When I got started, I was watching his YouTube stuff and watching some of his reviews and on his website. And his is what got me wanting to get into this. It's the first one that made me think this is doable for somebody like me. And before that, it did not seem that way. So I appreciate it, sir.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad. That was it. I really want to be a proponent of anybody can do this, because if I'm the idiot that figured it out, everybody's smarter than me. Everybody can figure this out.
That's pretty much the way I go at this too. If I can figure this out, everybody can make this. It's wood.
It may take everybody a different amount of time, but this right here, this format proves that there are really good people out there willing to give their information freely to help out other people. And it's the joy of seeing the maker communities. The end goal is to make something, and that's what we want everybody else to make and succeed in that. And this proves you guys didn't get paid anything for this. We're all here on our free accord, and this.
And to back up what JR said earlier, I'm kind of a proponent of the Facebook thing that you set up. I've been on a lot of sites, and I've had people be ugly to me beyond belief. I just don't go back. I had one time he didn't know what I was doing. I was like, okay, see ya. But this site has been super helpful to the first time person to somebody that's got 10,000 hours. I love that. And so it's a good environment to learn in and just ask questions and learn from. And I do every day too, by the way.
Yeah. Well, let me bring us home, because we're about to get to the 2.5 hour mark here, and just reiterate that part of the genesis for this little get together today, and I'm going to call him out, and he may not be comfortable with it, but in September of 2020, when I had questions about my, anticipated purchase, I was contacted by Mitz with a kind offer of a phone call, and, hey, if you have questions, let me know, or whatever. And that was really my entry into the Facebook group that showed me that this was different. And yeah, you're right, Layne. There's an awful lot of Facebook groups. So I do all kinds of other stuff like everybody does, reloading groups and other, hunting groups and all that stuff. And all of them almost always boil down to my golf clubs are bigger than your golf clubs kind of conversations, right? So this group is unique. And I really mean it when I say you all are so far ahead of everybody else because you're willing to go out and try, and you'll turn some nice wood into scrap wood just to try it out and see if there's a chance this might work. Let's go give it a whack, right? And then if it doesn't, we all kind of turn to each other in this setting, typically found on Facebook and all that. I just think it's awesome. And so the genesis of this was I reached out to Layne and Mitz and said, hey, you guys are really further along in the software stuff. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I don't do any 3D stuff, and not because I don't like it. It's just not in my workflow. I don't happen to do that kind of stuff yet. But I've just been so impressed with the level of helpfulness in this group and all that stuff. That was the genesis for this particular thing. We'll get together, Layne and Mitz and I, and see, frankly, if they have time available in the future. The holidays are coming, right? So a little bit of a time constraint there, but I would be very encouraged by the fact that we have gone so much past the original hour that we had set up, because I think it spawned some good conversation. But all of it is generated from the overall sense that this group is super helpful to each other. And that includes everybody that took the time to attend today. And just want to say thanks to everybody for coming and hanging out and, having some great dialogue and all that stuff. And so without any further ado, let's put our inaugural session to bed. And I wish you all a very happy Friday evening. And I hope you go out and make something amazing on your machine. And we will see each other all on Facebook. And so we will, I'll share this video with Layne and Mitz, and they could, populate it on their YouTube, and I'll probably cook it down and throw it on mine just for anybody that missed it. But if there's any questions, please follow up on Facebook, either in the general area or wherever is comfortable for you. And we look forward to seeing you soon. But special thanks to Mitz and Layne for agreeing to come on and participate as the subject matter experts. It was awesome. I thought it was a lot of fun.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this,
Thank you
JR.
all. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.